What if the games you play, the shows you watch, and the fantasies you escape to online suddenly became your real life? 400 years ago, a man consumed so many stories that he lost his mind. Or perhaps he found a new one. He decided to become a hero in a world that called him a fool, and his quest reveals a dangerous truth about the reality we choose to build for ourselves. This is the story of a man who serves as a warning and an inspiration for our own age of curated identities and digital delusions. His creator was a man named Miguel de Cervantes, and his life was a testament to the brutal difference between the stories we love and the world we are forced to live in. Born in 1547, Cervantes grew up in the Spanish Golden Age, a time when the culture was saturated with chivalric romances. These were the superhero blockbusters of their day, paperbacks filled with perfect knights, dragons, and epic quests. Young Cervantes didn't just want to read these stories, he wanted to live them. So he became a soldier, joining the Spanish Navy infantry to seek his fortune and glory in the empire's wars. In 1571, at the colossal Battle of Lepanto, he found it. The sea itself churned with the fury of hundreds of galleys clashing the Ottoman Empire against the Holy League. The air was thick with smoke, the roar of cannons, and the splintering of wood. Cervantes, burning with a fever that should have kept him below deck, refused to stay down. He demanded to be put in the place of most danger, and there he fought like a man possessed. He was shot twice in the chest, the lead balls tearing through him. A third blast of shrapnel shattered his left hand, leaving it permanently crippled. He would carry the injury for the rest of his life, not as a mark of tragedy, but as a badge of honor, proof that he had been there, that he had bled for a cause greater than himself. But the world has little use for heroes once the battle is over. 4 years later, pirates captured his ship, and Cervantes was dragged to Algiers to be sold as a slave. For 5 excruciating years, he lived in captivity, the memory of glory fading under the North African Sunday. But even in chains, his idealism burned. He was not a passive captive, he was a leader. He planned 4 separate daring escape attempts. One involved digging a tunnel to a hidden garden, another a complex plot to be rescued by a Spanish frigate. Each one failed, and each failure should have meant his death. But his courage was so audacious, so undeniable, that his captors, instead of executing him, decided he must be a man of great importance and held him for an enormous ransom. When he was finally freed and returned to Spain, he was a disabled veteran in a country that had forgotten his sacrifice. He tried to make a living as a writer, but his plays failed to capture the public's imagination. His adventures were over. Reality had set in with a crushing finality. Desperate, he took a soul-crushing job as a government tax collector. The man who had battled empires was now reduced to trudging down the dusty roads of Andalusia, confronting resentful farmers to seize a portion of their grain and olive oil. He saw the harshness of life up close, a world away from the chivalric codes of his books. Inevitably, after his chaotic accounts came up short, he was accused of embezzlement and thrown into a debtor's prison. It was there, in the darkness and the filth, a broken man who had been a soldier, a slave, and a failure, that he finally put his life's brutal education to use. He would write a story to mock the fantasies that had once inspired him. He would create a character who truly believed in the old codes of chivalry, and he would unleash him upon the cruel, messy, and deeply unheroic real world. The result was something far greater than a parody. From the depths of his own disillusionment, Cervantes was about to create a madman who would show the world what it truly meant to be a hero. In a dusty, forgotten corner of La Mancha, a quiet country gentleman named Alonso Quijano lives a life of quiet obscurity. He is a man fading into the background of the world until he finds a purpose in the pages of his books. He doesn't just read his tales of chivalry, he consumes them day and night until the ink bleeds into his own reality. The line between the world as it is and the world as it is written vanishes. He makes a decision. He will no longer be a passive reader of adventures. He will become the hero of one. He was, in essence, creating an avatar, a new identity forged from pure fiction to escape the prison of his mundane self, not so different from the ideal personas we curate for ourselves online today. His transformation is comically meticulous. He pulls a suit of armor from his attic that belonged to his great-grandfather, its metal pitted with rust, and spends a week polishing it. He patches its broken helmet with green ribbons and cardboard, a flimsy defense against a world of hard knocks. He then looks at his old bony farm horse, a creature of skin and bone, and sees a noble steed. He spends 4 days crafting the perfect name for it, finally settling on Rocinante, a name he feels is grand and sonorous. But every knight needs a princess, a noble lady, to whom he can dedicate his victories. Quixote has none. So, in the most profound act of creation, he invents one. He dredges up a faint memory of a local farm girl from a neighboring village, a peasant named Aldonza Lorenzo, known for her strength in salting pork. In the forge of his imagination, he transforms this coarse, real woman into the peerless lady Dulcinea del Toboso, a paragon of beauty and virtue. He has likely never spoken to her, but in his new reality, she is the sun, moon, and stars. Finally, he renames himself. He is no longer the obscure Alonso Quijano. He is the valiant Don Quixote de la Mancha. And yet, a knight cannot quest alone. For his squire, he doesn't choose a young nobleman, but a poor, illiterate farmer from his village, Sancho Panza. The offer he makes is as mad as he is. Join me, and I will make you the governor of an island. For Sancho, a man whose reality is defined by poverty and the constant toil for bread, the promise of an island is a fantasy worth chasing. After a moment of comical negotiation where Sancho insists on bringing his donkey, he agrees, abandoning his wife and children to follow the madman. With this, the greatest duo in literature is born. Don Quixote, the soaring idealist who sees the world as it ought to be, and Sancho Panza, the grounded materialist who sees the world only as it is. One is the spirit, the other is the flesh, and together they represent a complete, walking contradiction. Their first stop is a grimy roadside inn. To Sancho, it's a ruin on the verge of collapse. To Don Quixote, it is a magnificent castle with 4 towers and pinnacles of shining silver. He mistakes 2 serving wenches for beautiful princesses and the innkeeper for the castle's lord. The innkeeper, a shrewd man who has read a few books himself, sees a chance for some fun and decides to play along. That night, in a stable yard, using his accounting ledger as a holy book and a stump of a candle for light, the innkeeper dubs the old man a knight. It's a total farce, witnessed by a mule driver and the 2 wenches who struggle to keep from laughing. But for Don Quixote, it is real. He is, at last, a true knight-errant. This journey into madness has only just begun. The relationship between Don Quixote and his squire Sancho will grow and change in ways neither could expect. If you want to follow the adventures of literature's most iconic characters, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into classic books that have shaped our world. With the world remade in his own mind, the newly knighted Don Quixote sets out with Sancho to right wrongs. They are 2 tiny figures against the vast Spanish plain, a dreamer and a realist, riding toward their first great confrontation with the unchangeable truth. What happens when a noble quest crashes headfirst into reality? For Don Quixote, reality takes the form of 40 enormous giants spinning their monstrous arms on the plains of La Mancha. The wind picks up, the creaking of the old wooden sails filling the air. "Look there, friend Sancho," he cries, his voice filled with heroic purpose. "Fortune has delivered into our hands the foul race of giants." Sancho, his eyes wide with terror, sees only windmills. He pleads with his master, shouting that those are not arms but sails, turned by the wind to grind the grain. "Can't you see?" he begs, pointing frantically. But Don Quixote is no longer in Sancho's world. He is living in a different algorithm, one that feeds him a narrative of epic battles, while everyone else sees only the mundane truth. Ignoring Sancho's cries, he commends himself to his lady Dulcinea, covers his heart with his shield, lowers his lance, and spurs Rocinante into a full, clumsy charge. The impact is immediate and disastrous. His lance connects with a turning sail and is instantly shattered into splinters. The force of the blow catches both man and horse, throwing them violently across the field in a cloud of dust. It is the perfect metaphor for his quest. A single, brave, deluded man, charging headfirst into the spinning machinery of the real world and being broken by it. This was the pattern, the brutal algorithm of his quest. He would see glory, and the world would deliver a beating. This battle against reality repeated itself endlessly. Weeks later, he saw a great cloud of dust on the horizon. He perceived it as the clash of two massive armies, describing their knights, emblems, and allegiances in breathtaking detail to a bewildered Sancho. In his mind, he heard the trumpets of war and the clash of steel. In reality, he heard only the frantic bleating of sheep. It was two large flocks being moved by shepherds. Believing he was a hero intervening in a historic battle, Don Quixote charged the flock, spearing and killing at least 7 of the animals before the enraged shepherds drove him off with a volley of stones from their slings, knocking out several of his teeth. Another time, he saw a barber riding on a donkey, wearing a simple brass basin on his head to protect him from the rain. But in Don Quixote's eyes, the sun glinting off the basin transformed it into the mythical golden helmet of Mambrino, an enchanted artifact from one of his books. He attacked the terrified barber, who fled, leaving the basin behind. Don Quixote triumphantly placed the barber's basin on his own head, a symbol of his victory, oblivious to how foolish he looked. These episodes raise the book's central, lingering question. Is it better to live a noble fantasy or a mundane reality? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Through it all, something remarkable happens to Sancho Panza. He came for an island, for a life free of work. But as he watches his master get beaten, humiliated, and mocked, again and again, for a code of honor that no one else follows, his loyalty deepens. He sees that Don Quixote's madness is intertwined with an unbreakable spirit. He may be insane, but he is also brave, kind, and utterly committed to his vision. Sancho still sees the windmills, but he grows to love the man who sees the giants. He becomes his protector, his friend, and his anchor to reality, even as he finds himself pulled deeper into his master's fantasy. Battered but unbowed, Don Quixote continues his quest. But his adventures are about to take a strange turn, as the story of his life escapes the page and enters the very world he is trying to change. Imagine becoming a celebrity, your every adventure and failure recorded in a best-selling book. Now, imagine discovering that a stranger has hijacked your story and published a fake sequel, profiting from your name. This is the world's first case of high-profile identity theft, and it happened to Don Quixote. The first part of Cervantes' novel, published in 1605, was a runaway bestseller. It was a viral sensation. It was read aloud in inns, at the royal court, and by scholars in universities. People held costume parties where they dressed as the famous knight and his squire. Then, in 1614, an anonymous author writing under the name Avellaneda published a fraudulent second part. It was a cheap knockoff, portraying Quixote as a crude fool and Sancho as a glutton. It was a character assassination, and Cervantes was furious. He responded by writing his own, authentic Part 2, and in it, he did something that changed fiction forever. He broke the fourth wall. In the real Part 2, Don Quixote and Sancho Panza are now international celebrities. The first book about their lives exists within their world. As they travel, they constantly meet people who have read it. They enter an inn, and the innkeeper, recognizing them, gives them the best room, not out of kindness, but for the story he can tell later. Dukes and duchesses invite them to their castles, not to honor them, but to stage cruel and elaborate pranks to see if the madman is as amusing in person as he is on the page. They are forced to live up to their own legend. Then they hear about the fake sequel. They are outraged that imposters are profiting from their identities. In one incredible scene, they meet a character who has just stepped out of the fake book, and he confirms that the Quixote and Sancho he knew were pale imitations of the real men standing before him. The idea of characters becoming aware of their own story was revolutionary. If you find this piece of literary history as fascinating as we do, share this video with someone who loves a good story. By doing this, Cervantes turned his book into a profound commentary on reality and fiction. His characters were no longer simply in a story. They were now grappling with their own fame, their own legend, and the fictions being told about them. They had become truly modern, but as their legend grows, the real world, no longer content to just laugh at Don Quixote, begins to conspire against him, preparing one final, tragic confrontation, designed to shatter his fantasy once and for all. Every journey must have an end. But for a man who remade the world in his own image, the final destination isn't death, it's sanity. On a cold morning on a beach in Barcelona, the salt spray in the air, Don Quixote is challenged to a duel by a mysterious knight of the white moon. The knight is an imposing figure in shining armor, a perfect image from the very books Quixote adores. The terms are absolute. If Don Quixote is defeated, he must lay down his weapons and return home for 1 year. The battle is brutally short. The Knight of the White Moon is younger, stronger, and his horse is faster. He unhorses Don Quixote with a single powerful pass, placing his lance at his throat as he lies helpless on the sand. Defeated and broken, Don Quixote accepts the terms. Only then is the truth revealed. His opponent is a friend from his own village, disguised in armor, who staged the fight as a desperate last resort to cure his madness. The journey home is a funeral procession for a dream. The lifeblood of knight-errantry has been drained from Don Quixote. Without his quest, he is no one. He arrives home a quiet, broken man, and a deep fever takes him. He is put to bed and sleeps for 6 hours straight. When he finally wakes, his friends and family gathered around his bed are stunned. His eyes are clear. The madness is gone. "My judgment is now free," he tells them in a calm, rational voice from the murky shadows of ignorance. He declares that he is no longer Don Quixote de la Mancha, but Alonso Quijano once more. He renounces all the books of chivalry he once loved, calling them poison and nonsense. He dictates his will and, peacefully, dies. But in that quiet room, his loyal squire Sancho Panza weeps, begging him not to die, to get up, put on his armor, and return to the road with him. Sancho isn't crying for the sane Alonso Quijano. He is crying for the magnificent madman Don Quixote. The world got its sane man back, but it lost its only hero. The book never answers who was right, the man who saw giants or the world that saw only windmills. That final, terrifying choice is left to us. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of the greatest books ever written. For more explorations of classic literature that challenge the way we see the world, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you never miss an episode.